Welcome to the Travel Agent, Disney and Beyond, your Canadian connection to theme park news, travel information, practical tips, and vacation savings. I'm your host, Stephen Payne. Coming up in today's episode, we'll continue looking forward to the holidays by discussing Disney's Jollywood Nights at Hollywood Studios. Then I'll share some thoughts on the Daredeviler and Canada's Wonderland, talk about specialty dining on cruises, and wrap up the episode with an in-depth interview about beloved Playa Mujeres with the Dot Beach snob Robin Baxter Bering as well as Deals Dish. It is a full episode with lots of information to share. If you want more information about cruising and travel, including the latest cruise promotions and limited time offers, subscribe to my Expedia Cruises personalized email newsletters. Simply click on Fan Mail and send me your name and email address, and I'll add you to my mailing list for the newsletter as well as for show updates and information. You can also email your name and email address to the following email: stephen@thetravelagent.ca. Stephen is spelled S-T-E-P-H-E-N. And make sure you spell agent with an E-H, because we're Canadian. That email once again is stephen@thetravelagent.ca. This information will also appear in the show notes. Let's begin with Mouse Minutes. Last week we talked about Christmas at Disney and Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party, which takes place at the Magic Kingdom. Now there are other events. I mentioned this last week. At Disney's Hollywood Studio, there is Jollywood Nights. And at Epcot, there is the International Festival of the Holidays. Jollywood Nights at Disney's Hollywood Studios is a separately ticketed event, just like Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. You can get admission to the parks starting at 5:30 p.m., but the party starts at 7:30 p.m. and lasts until 12:30 a.m. So the party itself lasts 5 hours, but you can tag on a couple of extra hours at the beginning just for some fun park time. Now there is a different vibe than Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. At Jollywood Nights, it's more of a Hollywood spin on the holidays, or a movie-type spin. Just like the park itself is, well, Hollywood Studios, and was built with the idea that, we were going to look at shows and movies, and that was going to be the basis of the theme for that park. The Jollywood Nights has the same theming idea. Of course, like all the parks in Disney during the holidays, there are going to be decorations. So, for example, in Hollywood Studios, you'll see giant garlands draped over Hollywood Boulevard, or you'll see glowing reindeers hanging from the lampposts. So what are some of the events at Jollywood Nights? Well, to start, there's a stage show. It's called Disney Holidays in Hollywood, and it's held at the Theater of the Stars. The show is hosted by Kermit and Miss Piggy from the Muppets, and there are performances inspired by holiday television specials. These performances include appearances by Mickey, Minnie, Belle, and Tiana. If you go to the Hyperion Theater, you can view What's This? Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas Sing-Along. If you are a fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas, you'll know that What's This is a song from that movie. And so what you need to do is imagine that you're in the theater singing What's This? Or you could be singing Sally's song while surrounded by Halloween meets Christmas decorations. And you can do that all while basking in the gentle snowfall. Sounds like fun, right? There's also a skating show called Glisten. This happens in front of the Chinese Theater with projections on the theater and skaters spinning, leaping, and dancing to classic holiday tunes and some original songs for Jollywood Nights. There are other parties and events around the parks. For example, you can join a 1930s soiree in the courtyard of the Hollywood Tower Hotel. That is indeed one of my favorite locations. That's where the Twilight Zone Hollywood Tower of Terror attraction is. And I really love the theming in that attraction, which does go back to 1930s style. It's as if the events of the Hollywood Tower of Terror happen in the 1930s. So the soiree is also themed the same time period. And there's going to be a live band playing swing hits from that era. And that sounds fantastic. It sounds like it would fit right in and certainly would be a fun thing to attend. Now, if you want to have some fun with the kids that maybe isn't quite so horrifying, well, I don't think it's horrifying, but it's just by the Tower of Terror. But you could join Edna Mode, Frozone, and Mike Wazowski for a dance party in Pixar Plaza. That sounds like fun as well. You'd be dancing to holiday classics, and there's probably going to be a little bit of a disco tinge to it. If you want to be classier, you can attend Jazzy Holidays at the Hollywood Brown Derby restaurant. In that context, you would have live music, jazz music obviously, there would be holiday standards being played there, and there of course would be holiday decorations and special themed food. The problem with that one is that you would have to make a reservation to the Hollywood Brown Derby to be part of that event, and so that will cost you a little extra money if you're going to eat there. Now, as far as shows go, there is the big show called Jingle Bell, Jingle Bam. This is the equivalent of Minnie's wonderful Christmas-time fireworks at the Magic Kingdom. But of course, it's at Hollywood Studios. So the show center is not on the castle, but on the Chinese theater. There are projections on the theater. There will be lasers, holiday music, and of course, fireworks. During the show, there's a story presented by Wayne and Lanny from Prep and Landing about a mission to rescue Santa. And you'll see scenes from classics like Beauty and the Beast, Mickey's Christmas Carol, and Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. And there will be snowfall over Hollywood Boulevard. I have been to Hollywood Studios when the snow has flown. I've been there in the Hyperion Theater when they were doing the Frozen sing-along, and the snow fell there, and that was magical. Kids around me were jumping out of their seat. They were so excited when the snow started falling. And Elsa was singing Let It Go, the famous standard now. And the snow was flying and people were having a great time. Also, I have been out on the streets on Hollywood Boulevard when snow starts flying, and it is also quite magical and fun. Now, as with most of these events, there are character meet and greets. Many of them are quite unique. For example, you might meet Stitch dressed as Santa. That would be kind of fun. There's also Chewbacca celebrating Life Day. Well, you have to be immersed in Star Wars lore to know what Life Day is. Interestingly, it coincides with Christmas time. Or you could meet Baloo and King Louie from the Jungle Book, which doesn't happen every day at Disney World. Also at this time, many of the rides are open. That's a fantastic thing about these events. If you like to get on attractions without waiting a long time in lines, this usually provides the opportunity to do that. And there are some great rides in Hollywood Studios. My favorite, of course, being the Hollywood Tower of Terror, but I have other ones that I really enjoy too. I really enjoy Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I enjoy the Rock and Roller Coaster, which used to be Aerosmith, but is now the Muppets. I haven't been on the rethemed Rock and Roller Coaster. I hear it's good. There's also Slinky Dog Dash and other similar rides. And also in Hollywood Studios, you can go to the Galaxy's Edge, which is the Star Wars area. Finally, don't forget about all the special holiday treats that you can purchase. Every time there's a party, the people at Disney design special treats that are themed out for the holidays. And so there will be lots of holiday treats that you can get, but it's not included in your ticket, so you'd have to buy those. So how much does all this cost? Well, tickets for Jollywood Nights start at $169 USD and range up to $199 USD. And again, as I mentioned last week, their range is because they use dynamic pricing. So the price of the ticket varies depending on when you go. Most of the time, if you're going closer to Christmas, the prices will be higher. And if you're going during a weekday, the prices will be lower. Or if you're going at a time that is early in the run, it'll be cheaper. And also, there are dates after Christmas, which will likely be cheaper as well. So I'll just run through the dates for you, just in case you'd like to know. And remember, you can go to the show notes to see these dates. So Jollywood Nights runs on November the 7th, 14th, 16th, 21st, 23rd, and 28th. And it also runs in December on the 5th, the 7th, the 12th, the 14th, the 19th, the 21st, and the 23rd. And if you'd like to go in the year of 2027, there are dates on January the 3rd and January the 5th. Now, I've never attended Jollywood Nights, but I talked to lots of people who have been there, and I've also read a number of things online, reviews and so on, and there are quite a few people who like this event more than Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Time Party. And I find that interesting. I think they like the vibe that is present in Hollywood Studios. Maybe it's a little more glittery, and maybe it's more movie-like, Hollywood-like, I'm not sure. But for whatever reason, people like the vibe, and they also really like the show. Jingle Bell, Jingle Bam. I mean, I like just saying the name of the show, so I can't imagine the show would be a letdown with that kind of a name. Now let's move on to Park Pulse. This past week, on Sunday, I went to Canada's Wonderland, and I rode Daredeviler. Now, Daredeviler is a refurbished ride. It originally was called Flight Deck, and once upon a time, when the park was owned by Paramount, it was called Top Gun. This ride became known as a ride that would bang your head in a bad way, right? You would ride this roller coaster, and it turned you upside down and went through some corkscrews and things like that. You ride in a car that is suspended from the track, but as you got turned, flipped around, and so on, it was a rough ride, and people would bang their head against the restraints, which included pieces that were by your head. So you'd bang against the restraints. And people didn't like that, and at some point they closed the ride down and decided they were going to reinvent the ride. And they did. And now this past week they finally opened it, and the ride's called Daredeviler. Now, the theming of Daredeviler is new. Obviously, it's not Top Gun anymore. It's not Flight Deck. And they've kind of gone back in time in terms of theming. And I thought I would read to you what Canada's Wonderland says about the theming of this ride. So they say, at the turn of the 20th century, world expositions captivated crowds with visions of the future. Among the wonders of that era was a revolutionary experimental aircraft unveiled by French inventor Etienne Vaillant, known as the Daredeviler. The prototype was engineered to attempt maneuvers no aircraft of its time could safely achieve. The plane's true fame came during the barnstorming era, piloted by the fearless Canadian aviator Clara Hawk Redmond, whose breathtaking dives, barrel rolls, and near-miss stunts dazzled audience wherever she flew. Though the original aircraft faded into aviation folklore, its reputation for heart-pounding exhilaration never disappeared. Now, that legend rises once more. The Daredeviler invites guests to step into a grand World Expo-themed experience where past ambition meets modern engineering. Sweeping through tight turns, dramatic drops, and adrenaline-pumping inversions, riders are launched into a high-speed thrill ride inspired by the daring feats of early stunt pilots. So that's what Wonderland has to say about that ride. Now, when they talk about the ride and they talk about the refurbishments, they talk about new trains with improved seating and open vest-style restraints, track refinements for a smoother, more dynamic ride, and enhanced comfort and visibility for an immersive flying sensation. So here's my commentary. I like the theming idea. It's a good one. I like it better than Flight Deck. It's quaint. I don't know. It's a flashback to an old era. And I think when it comes to theming, I like being taken out of my time and into some other time. The colors on the tracks and the colors of the ride are nice. The track is painted green with yellow highlights, and there are browns and burgundies throughout the ride. The seats are red. The colors are nice. And the theming's nice. There's a biplane in the queue. When you go into the queue, you pass a biplane, and it's nice looking. It's the Daredeviler, I guess. And you can see a photo of that on my Instagram if you go to the handle @thetravelagent, spelled with an EH. But the theming could be so much more. They could have plussed it much more than it is. So it's good theming, but I feel like it fell short. So there's so many possibilities, right? They could have added so many more things to the theming to make it more interesting. I mean, back in the day when the ride was called Top Gun, there were flight hangars, there was a munitions depot, and when you went through the flight hangars, you would look in the windows and see props from the movie Top Gun, or props that might be in the movie Top Gun, like air traffic controller, radios, and all kinds of things like that. And so when you went through the queue, you went through these hangars, you looked through the windows, you looked at the buildings, there were labels, the hangars were labeled with numbers, the buildings were labeled with what they are. But now, they've repainted everything, but there's no labels. And when you walk through the hangars, there's no windows, you don't see anything, it's just boarded up black wall. And so it's kind of boring. Like I say, I like the walkway, I like the queue, I like the path, there's all kinds of grass. It's a very grassy area. It's very nice, and the biplane's nice. But there's not enough. You're walking through these hangars, and they're just like boring buildings. But that's just my complaint. I'm probably spoiled by the time I've spent at Disney parks or at Universal Studios because they're experts at theming. And I'm afraid that Canada's Wonderland is just a vague resemblance of what you can find in Orlando. However, there's more to say. So the ride was fun, and I do like the new restraint system. I like the vests. They come down over your head, and the vest goes over your chest area, and you snap the buckle, and away you go. There's no longer anything surrounding your head. But here's where the problem lies, and that is it a smoother ride? Well, not really. I have to be honest. It wasn't a smoother ride. In my memory, it felt a lot like the ride used to feel. You still get jolted around in the ride. The plus is that with the new restraints, you're not banging your head. But if you think you're going to get on the ride and it's going to be a much smoother experience, well, you have another thing coming. And that's what happened to me. I had been reading what Wonderland had to say. I even read some comments online that said the ride was going to be smoother. I think I mentioned that last week. But the reality is it was not smoother. You still get jolted around and knocked around in the ride. Now, as I said, it was still fun. It was fun to go on. The ride hadn't been on for a long time. And I, of course, love roller coasters. But just be forewarned that it's not smooth. It's not smooth like Leviathan or Behemoth. And that makes me think about the Great Canadian Mindbuster, just as an aside. The Great Canadian Mindbuster has also been refined or refurbished over the last couple of years. They took 2 years to refurbish the Great Canadian Mindbuster, and they've smoothed out the track quite a bit. Now, I rode that last Sunday, and that was a really smooth ride. In fact, in my group, I had someone who did not want to ride the Mindbuster because they were concerned about how bumpy it was going to be, because wooden coasters, especially the older ones, are notorious for bumpiness, for bumping you around, possibly giving you a sore back, that kind of thing. But the Great Canadian Mindbuster, wow, they've really improved that ride. And I would recommend it for anyone. It's a lot of fun still, even though it was one of the original rides at the park. It's lots of fun. So that is an example of a ride that's been smoothed out. But the Daredeviler, no, it's not smoother. The restraints are better. The theme is interesting, but it is not smoother. So that is my report on the Daredeviler. Now, while I was there last Sunday, I did ride 16 attractions, and just for your interest, I'll tell you what I rode. I rode Alpine Fury, Daredeviler, Swings of the Century, Cyclone, Sledgehammer, The Fly, Shockwave, Whitewater Canyon, Timberwolf Falls, Yukon Striker, Great Canadian Mindbuster, Behemoth, Backlot Stunt Coaster, Antique Carousel, Riptide, and Leviathan. So that's quite a few rides that we got in there on a Sunday. Sundays are a good day to visit the parks because I think people are thinking about their workday on Monday and they avoid going to Wonderland on Sundays. Plus, there was the threat of rain. There was supposed to be thunderstorms, which never came about. So it was a good day to ride. We didn't have to wait in lines that were particularly long. Plus, I got there early, so I was able to get on the very popular rides early on. Some of those rides, some of those attractions I had not been on for years. So it was fun to try some things out again, like Whitewater Canyon. I haven't ridden that in, at least 20 years, probably more. I was most impressed by Shockwave. That's a ride I hadn't been on for a long time either, and I'd forgotten how good that one was. Maybe not quite as impressive when you're looking at it, but when you're on it, man, it's a thrill ride, to say the least. And I love the way you get flipped around in your chair, you go upside down, you're kind of moving in two different directions at once. It's a lot of fun. So if you haven't ridden Shockwave, I'd recommend that as a thrill ride, but don't ride it if you're scared of thrill rides. I will tell you that you probably should avoid Wild Beast. I rode Wild Beast in June, and we were talking about smooth rides and how Great Canadian Mindbuster is a smooth wooden coaster. Wild Beast is a typical wooden coaster. It is so rocky and bangy. It just shakes you around. That is not a comfortable ride. It kind of made me laugh. There were two guys in front of me, and the one, about halfway through the ride to 3/4 of the way through the ride, the one guy turned to the other guy and said, "See, I told you we shouldn't have rode this one. It's ridiculous." And the other guy was just like sheepishly looking and not really commenting. But the one guy was pretty concerned, and he was complaining from halfway through to the end about how bad that ride was and how he's getting bumped around. So unless you want a chiropractic back adjustment, do not ride the Wild Beast. Now, I wanted to talk about single rider advantage when you're at Wonderland. There are single rider lines, and you can really take advantage of that. In June, for the first time ever, I went to Canada's Wonderland as a single rider. I just went to the Wonderland by myself because I have a season pass, so I thought it would be fun to do. And I got a chance to try out the single rider lines. And I just want to report that that's a really great thing to do if you're a single rider, or if you're going with some friends, but you're okay riding by yourselves. So I rode Alpenfury. Now that ride, the single rider line may not be as useful as other rides. There was a wait time of 90 minutes for Alpenfury when I boarded that ride. I went into the single rider line and I waited an hour and 15 minutes. So that was only 15 minutes short of the posted wait time. And I've also read online that there are people who sometimes waited longer in the single rider line than they would have in the regular standard line. So that one you have to make a judgment call on about whether you'll ride single rider or not. But the standard line does move fairly quickly, but the lineups are big for Alpenfury because it is the newest ride and it is a lot of fun. But besides Alpenfury, I rode Yukon Striker, Behemoth, Leviathan, and Wild Beast. And, I recorded the time. So when I got in line for Yukon Striker, from the moment I got in line to the moment I walked off was 13 minutes. That's the wait time plus the ride time included. And for Behemoth, it was 12 minutes. And for Leviathan, it was 8 minutes. So you can really cut down your time in lines by being a single rider. There was, of course, no wait for Wild Beast. Now, some of you might be wondering about me mentioning Leviathan, for example, having a single rider line. It doesn't officially have a single rider line from what I can tell, but I went up to the ride attendant and asked about a single rider line. They told me to get in the Fast Pass line, go to the front, and just say that I'm a single rider. So there's a tip for you. If you want to ride as a single rider, you can probably go in the Fast Pass line and just tell them you're a single rider going through the Fast Pass line. Behemoth is another one. There is a single rider line for Behemoth, but it's not visible when you get to the front, so you have to look for it. And a lot of people miss the fact. I read online recently somebody saying, oh, there's no single rider line for Behemoth, but that's not true. There is actually one. Just ask the ride attendant. So again, the idea of riding single rider could save you a lot of park time. I certainly rode all the big rides in a very short period of time in June. But just a reminder that if you're going in the single rider line, you are a single rider. There's been some discussion on Reddit about groups going into the single rider line. And I think that's okay as long as you understand that you are single riders and not a group. So apparently some people go up to the front in the single rider line and then ask to ride together. That's a no-no. Don't do that. You should be thrown out of the park for that. When you get in the single rider line, you're a single rider. So even if you're with a group of friends, you just have to know. You just have to go with what the park attendant tells you to do. And if you get seated on the same ride, well, that was your luck. But be prepared to ride alone and not with your group. I actually did go into the single rider line on Sunday for Yukon Striker with my friends, and we rode as single riders, but we were fortunate. 4 of us got on the Yukon Striker all at the same time and all sitting together. I don't know why that happened, but we didn't ask for it. It just happened. One more thing about Wonderland. I wanted to note that season passes for 2026 and 2027 just went on sale. And now seems like a good time to buy. You can get a gold pass right now for $99 plus the processing fee, which is up to $9.99. If you buy now, the gold pass includes parking and one bring a friend pass. Now, parking is a controversial topic for Wonderland. A lot of people complain about it because the cost of parking is $44 when you go to Wonderland now. So getting the parking included in your gold pass, that's a real benefit. But recently, Canada's Wonderland has only put free parking on the Prestige passes, which are more expensive. They're not associated with the Gold Pass anymore. You have to buy all-season parking. However, right now, you can get the parking with your Gold Pass, and that's why it's probably a good time to buy right now. So you'll get the free parking, you get the one Bring a Friend Pass, and then I don't know if you're aware of this, but the benefits of the Gold Pass include entry into other Six Flags parks, like Darien Lake and Cedar Point. So those 2 parks are fairly close by to those who live in Southern Ontario. So you can go to Darien Lake, you can go to Cedar Point and enjoy those parks with your pass. And parking is free there as well. And if you'd like, you can add the meal plan and the drink plan to your pass. There's all-season meal plans, there's all-season drink passes. I've got all of those on my Gold Pass that I own currently. And it's quite nice because you can go to the parks on any given day and it really doesn't cost you much, right? It only costs me the cost of the gas it takes to drive there. Once you get there, you don't pay for parking. You get park entrance, and then you can have up to 2 meals during the day, and you can drink as much as you want every 15 minutes. And so once you've bought that pass and you've bought those benefits, you can go as many times as you want. And it turns out it kind of feels like a cheap outing if you go often. And with the pass, you can also get into Halloween Haunt and Winterfest, which are 2 great events to go to and allows you to get the most out of your park pass. The season's passes weren't on sale for several months because Wonderland had taken them off sale. Now they posted these passes. If you buy now, you can get a season's pass for this year, for the rest of this year, and you get the pass for all of 2027 as well. So again, for $99, that's a pretty good deal. And all you have to do is know that they're saying that you have to buy by September the 7th. Once September the 7th hits, their deal will change. And what I'm worried about is you might lose the free parking that comes with it. Now let's move on to Cruise Contemplations. I wanted to talk about specialty dining. We mentioned specialty dining in episode 1 in the interview with Nate Allen from Royal Caribbean. Nate talked about the Royal Train dining experience, and he talked about the Hollywood Club, which both sounded like fantastic experiences. And I mentioned during that interview that it's my opinion that you should book at least one specialty dining experience in any given cruise because they really are great experiences. Usually there's an extra fee accompanying these specialty dining experiences, unless you book a special rate. For example, Princess Plus is a rate that you can book with Princess, which includes specialty dining. I think there's 2 experiences with Princess Plus. And there are some other offers out there where some specialty dining is included, one I'll talk about near the end of the show. I've never had a bad experience with specialty dining, at least not so far. So I'm a big proponent of the specialty dining experiences. So here are 4 experiences I've had in the past couple of years. I did a special dining experience on the Disney Fantasy last year. I dined at Palo. I had Palo brunch. Palo is an adult-only exclusive dining experience on the ship. And what a great experience it was. I have great memories of that experience. The service I had there was very personal, very friendly, top-tier service, but not too intrusive. You really like that when you're dining. There was excellent variety on the menu. The menu itself, you start with an antipasti selection, which could be seafood or other. It's basically like a charcuterie board, right? And then there are soups you can choose from. You can move on to waffles and pancakes. I particularly liked the apple cinnamon waffles. You can have eggs of various types. You can have omelets. You can have pizza, flatbreads, and then there's entrees as well, including Parmesan crusted chicken breast, which is one that I thought was excellent. So the options are varied on the menu, and you can be as breakfasty as you want, or you can move into like lunch. And of course, the great thing about having brunch is it is cheaper than having dinner at Palo. And a lot of people say they like the food at the brunch better than the food at the dinner. Whatever the case is, I know I really enjoyed dining there and that the food was excellent. It was delicious food. And of course, the setting is elegant. It's upscale. It feels a little classy. And also you get these incredible views, right? You have the windows that are floor to ceiling windows and you're overlooking the ocean. So put that all together. Great food, friendly, personal service that's not intrusive, great variety. I mean, you can't go wrong. That was a great experience. When I was on the Celebrity Apex, I dined in a couple of spots. I dined at Le Petit Chef. That was a great experience. Now, some of you might know that Le Petit Chef is not exclusive to Celebrity Apex. It's on other celebrity ships. And it is also in some major cities in North America. So for us Canadians, there's a Le Petit Chef in Toronto. Now, if you don't know what Le Petit Chef is, well, it's an immersive show. They use 3D mapping technology, and that 3D mapping technology produces animations on your table and on your plates. And what happens is in these animations, a story is told over the multi-course meal that you have. So in several courses, these animations walk you through a little story. You basically have the smallest chef in the world on your table, and that smallest chef in the world is preparing food for you along with his friends. And it's quite cute. There's a lot of cute animations. And what happens is they, work together, they tell a story, but it's kind of the story of the course that you're eating, right? The dinner that you're eating, the appetizer you're eating, and so on. And what's fun about it is, you'll see this animation occur, and then right at the end of the animation, well, your food just magically appears on your plate, just like that. Now, of course, it doesn't magically appear, but it's all perfectly timed so that the server kind of sneaks in behind you and drops the plate just at the right time, so it just fits in with the animation story being told. So it's a lot of fun. And the food was very, very good. It was a unique experience that you don't get in many places, so that was a good one. Also on the Celebrity Apex, I dined at the Rooftop Garden Grill. Now, the Rooftop Garden Grill is located at the top of the ship, outdoors, in the middle of a live plant rooftop garden. And that is magnificent. So you're getting fresh air, you're dining outdoors, you can hear the ocean, you can see the ocean, and here you are with all these live plants surrounding you, and often you're listening to live music as well. The menu at the Rooftop Grill is more like a barbecue style menu. There are burgers, there's other barbecue favorites like ribs and so on, there's wings, that kind of thing. But very good menu and really creative, using fresh ingredients. And you've got this cozy, beautiful setting there. So that's another one that I really enjoyed on the Apex. And then also recently I dined at the Crown Grill on the Enchanted Princess. The Crown Grill is basically a steak and seafood house. It's upscale dining, attentive servers, and the typical thing you'd get in a steak and seafood house. High quality steaks, high quality seafood dishes. I really enjoyed my dining there. The food again was delicious. I've heard some people complain online that their experience wasn't good, either because the servers weren't that great or because the food wasn't that great. But in my experience, was fantastic, and others I've spoken to have also enjoyed that dining experience as well. So I think generally speaking, when you go for a specialty dining experience, well, you get what you pay for. You're paying a little extra, and you're getting plussed in terms of your food and your dining experience. Now, it's important to know with any of these specialty dining experiences, you do need to make reservations. So plan ahead, as I mentioned last week. Make sure that you are, or was it the first week? I don't remember. But I did talk about planning ahead, right? I think it was the first week. And make your reservations. Use your cruise planner to make reservations. Book before you get on board, because it's usually cheaper booking ahead of time than it is when you're on board. And especially if you're sailing with Celebrity or Royal Caribbean, do look on the cruise planner and look for sales, because oftentimes on the cruise planner, they'll have a special sale from week to week that the prices change. So keep your eye on the prices and see if you can snag a sale price for one of the specialty dining experiences. Let me know if you have any stories about specialty dining experiences. I think it would be great to hear from you, and maybe we can share some of the experiences we've had, either good or bad, with specialty dining. If you mention an experience that seems helpful for others to hear about, I will mention it in the podcast in future episodes so that others can benefit from your knowledge. I'm very interested in building a community here where we can help each other out. So if you have any stories about specialty dining experiences, please email me at stephen@thetravelagent.ca. The usual things, you spell Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, and you have to spell agent with an E-H. And now it's time for the Canadian Compass travel tip of the week. Well, once again, the travel tip of the week will be in the form of an interview. If you were listening last week, you'll know that I don't really have a slot in the show where I can put information about all-inclusives. I've got Mouse Minutes, I've got Park Pulse, and I've got Cruise Contemplations. So when I'm talking to someone about all-inclusives, where do I put that? Well, it's going in the Canadian Compass travel tip of the week. And I know it's kind of cheating, right? But I'm hoping that there will be some tips within these interviews that you'll be able to take away with you. Don't worry, we'll go back to other travel tips beyond just interviews in the weeks to come. But for this week, I have an interview about visiting beloved Playa Mujeres. And tips are being provided by Robin Baxter Bering in an interview I had with her. I'm here with Robin Baxter Bering, also known as the Beach Snob on Instagram. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you for having me, Stephen.
Robin, you're here to talk about beloved Playa Mujeres. It's an adults-only, all-inclusive couples resort located in a gated community about 11 kilometers north of downtown Cancun, which means it's about a 40-minute drive from the airport, and it's located in a community called Punta Sam, famous for its white sand beaches and turquoise waters. So let's start by talking about how you got there, how you got to Cancun. I understand you used Porter Airlines flying from Toronto to Cancun. Was that the first time you've flown Porter?
Yes, it was. And it was a fantastic experience. Honestly, I would definitely fly them again. The plane was much smaller. There were 2 seats on either side of the aisle, and that was it. The staff really looked like they actually enjoyed their jobs. We were both really, really pleased with the flight there and back. Yeah, absolutely. And for whatever reason, alcoholic drinks were free. The first 3 rows were first class, and they have their own flight attendant, silver service kind of thing. And there was no curtain dividing us. So
a number of people like Porter because of the 2x2. Because if you're traveling as a couple, then it's kind of nice because it's just the 2 of you in a row. Nicer than having a third person sitting there as well.
Yeah, and I usually get stuck in the middle.
Yeah, and then Porter as well. That's normal for all their flights. They serve alcohol on all their flights to all their clients. Yeah, so that's another selling point. I know a lot of people that I know are really impressed with Porter, and most people hate flying and they hate the airlines. They hate WestJet's been getting a lot of hate lately, and so on. But Porter, everyone likes Porter right now because of those perks. Yeah.
Those perks. And what I noticed was, I don't think it was real glass, but my husband ordered a glass of wine. And, they usually come in those little plastic, little wine glasses that you normally get on the other airlines. This was, if it wasn't glass, it was a great glass knockoff. And they gave so much. It wasn't like a regulated size of, 6 ounce. They poured that glass all the way full. They were freewheeling it, and obviously they weren't worried about cost and stuff. So maybe I shouldn't say that. I could ruin that for future.
Yes, it'll probably change over time, as these things do, shrink. What do they call it? Shrinkflation.
Oh, that's what that is? Shrinkflation. Yeah,
shrinkflation. When you're buying something in the grocery store and, it's a package of cheese and it used to be 700 grams and now it's only 500 grams. And it's the same price. That's called shrinkflation. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty common practice.
Now, I don't think this is the first time you've navigated Cancun Airport. So do you have any advice for our listeners who may be heading to Cancun Airport for the first time?
So actually, it was my first time in the Cancun Airport. Yes. It was a really interesting experience. And I have to say, it was so modern. It was much more modern than I thought it was going to be, having been to many other airports around the Caribbean, especially. And that I broke my foot a few weeks ago. So I had the VIP service of being wheeled from the gate through check-in, through customs, all that stuff. When you get through, so I do have just a heads up for people. When you get through customs, after the airport, you will see on your left and right sort of side booths, we'll call them, of people with little tables. And they're there to help you book excursions, tours, whatever it is that you'd like to do in your stay in Cancun. They are receiving commission. And the lady that we had was from, and I'm going to say this wrong, Ixtarat?
Ixtarat, yeah.
And so she was very, very much it was honestly 15, 20 minutes, got a broken foot. I just want to get to the resort. So we didn't end up going with any of the excursions she had to offer because, we hadn't even been to the resort yet, hadn't settled down, hadn't really thought, oh, what would you like to do? So just a heads up there, there's so many things you can do. I didn't realize all the things that they have going on in that area. And then when you get out of the airport, this was the big thing that that shocked me. And I wish I had my camera video rolling. When you go out to get your taxi or your, whatever transport you're leaving the airport with, there's literally a row on your left of 22 dozen cab operators screaming out of their booth trying to get you to choose them. I mean, it reminded me of something when I arrived in Uganda like 20 years ago or something like that, where it was just me, pick me. And, they're all leaning out. They all got signs. And it was funny. I've thought about if people were, older, like my parents who had never experienced anything like that, they might have been a little bit shocked, culture shocked, not know what to do. And since we already had Nexus pre-booked, we knew that we didn't need to do that. So we were just looking for the Nexus sign. I
mentioned this last week. I call that the red zone. I send a map to my clients and I basically tell them, you got to keep walking through the airport out to the back where the transfers that they're assigned are. It's like a gauntlet. You have to go through this area where people are trying to sell you everything, right? Even people who already have transfers arranged through their travel company sometimes get convinced that they need to take the transfer that's being offered to them. You just kind of want to navigate your way through there, especially like you say, you had your transfers prearranged. So you just want to push your way all the way to the back and find your transfer company. Otherwise, you're going to be dealing with people who are, as you say, on commission and trying to sell you a lot of things. Yeah.
And what we found out was that Nexus was not in that area where all of the other transport companies were. They were outside. And it looks like they've really expanded business because there's now all these outside fronts where operators are also working out of. So it's not just the inside anymore. It's also outside and beyond. And they were doing so much construction on the runways too. They were expanding the runways.
Yeah, it's a busy airport. How were the transfers? Did Nexus work out for you?
Perfect. They have an app, you download and they tell you when they're coming. They give you a heads up the day before, the morning of. So that worked out really, really well. We had great drivers. They never skipped a beat. Now I am going to delete the app because, my app pings like 10 times an hour for me to go. I guess it's whale shark season there and you can go see the whale sharks. Like I'm not there anymore. So yeah, I have to delete that now though.
They're also looking for their commission, I guess.
Oh yeah.
So when you finally arrived at beloved Playa Mujeres at the resort, what were your first impressions?
We were blown away, honestly. We arrived and the concierge, he greeted us and said, have you been here before? And we said, no. And he said, oh, well, you will be back again. Trust me. And we were like, right. Yeah. And then we get inside and he makes us this, it was already pre-made, these in a champagne flute of, wild berries and mezcal. I guess it's a traditional drink or it's something there at the, something signature, like a signature cocktail at the resort. And they just treated us like we were the only guests in the hotel for the next, half an hour as we checked in. And the furnishings in the reception area, it's very large and very modern, very elegant, sort of understated. Yeah. And I walked in and I went, wow, I wasn't used to that. Usually a lot of the Caribbean resorts have that outdoor reception area where everybody's standing in line, waiting, when am I going to get my room? And it wasn't like that at all.
That's great. It's nice to have a wow factor when you arrive, eh? That
yeah.
It's kind of reassuring.
Well, exactly. And even my husband, because I'm the one that planned it and found the place, he was just, he was blown away.
So I'm wondering what the surroundings were like when you arrived and you look around, what was the setting? And also along with that, maybe you could talk about the vibe or the atmosphere. What was the atmosphere like? Seeing as it's an adults only couples resort, what did that feel like there?
So it was couples only. It was very subdued. It wasn't party central by any means. And when we first arrived, I didn't see anybody because you also couldn't see the pools or the beach when you're checking in. And it's very lush. The gardens are just absolutely beautiful. And apparently, talking to other guests, they've kept it very boutiquey, very small, more serene vibe than the Excellence, which is next door. And they did that on purpose. But you can use the facilities at Excellence. So I was told by a couple from Texas that it's basically Excellence on a smaller scale without the big shows. And it's really a boutique hotel. Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful.
That's good to know because people need to know going in what to expect. What was your room like? What was the category of room that you stayed in, and were you satisfied?
We had the junior suite. We went the El Cheapo route. We certainly didn't have a luxury suite, but honestly, our suite was a luxury suite. The least expensive. It was the largest suite we have ever had. We had a full living room. The TV screen was at least a 60-inch. It was just huge. We had a bathtub, a circular bathtub outside of the bathroom and sort of attached to the living room with a picture window that overlooked the gardens and your balcony. I mean, it was just absolutely beautiful. I mean, you could sit in the tub and watch TV if you want, or sit in the tub and watch people in the pool. Yeah, it was gorgeous. It was very modern. And apparently they renovated the building that I was in last fall. So that's why it was so perfect and beautiful. And I mean, we had a bar area with a fridge, and it was fully stocked with granola bars and Oreos and juices and beers. And then there was a liquor cabinet up top, a glass liquor cabinet with brand name bottles of tequila, rum, Chilean wine. These were not labeled domestic brands. These were, international brands that a lot of people would normally pay extra for at a resort, right? To get that premium upgrade. I mean, we even had an espresso in the room. It was perfect.
Yeah, you might be paying a little more than some of the cheaper resorts, but again, you kind of get what you pay for, it seems, in a lot of cases.
You're right. Absolutely.
Punta Sam is renowned for its beaches, and you are on Instagram, the .beach snob. So I think you've had some experiences with beaches. How did this beach live up to its reputation?
And as you know, we both had done research on sargassum and how to avoid it. Playa Mujeres, the beach itself is so well manicured. And I put out a video, I've got a video coming out on YouTube as well, that every morning they actually groom it. So there is not one piece of gum wrapper, there is no bottle cap on that beach. They sift it every morning. And it's so soft, and the beach itself is one of the nicest I've ever seen. As far as a resort beach, if you've got hotels sort of lined up. Now there was some sargassum, like so little, it didn't impact anything. But there were a couple of people that said, when they were in the water, they didn't, like the seaweed. I really, because of my foot, I could only go in a couple of times, and I didn't find that at all. But it is probably the most manicured beach I've ever seen. There must be also some sort of patrol. I'm sure it's not the police, but, a guy on a four-wheel, he's got like the little red light, up and down, really safe. I think that they really market it to like more of a romantic destination, like that whole strip there, because it is more of a secluded beach than the Mayan Riviera. You can't just go there to the beach. You can't just say, okay, we're going to the beach today and we're going to go to Playa Mujeres.
Yeah.
You have to get there via a resort.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is beautiful.
Do they have seating and loungers or umbrellas available on the beach?
Oh yeah, and their pictures on their website was what actually that was the final, like, okay, this is where we're going. I loved this setup. And even you can see on their website, the sand looks so white and just clean, and they have beautiful payapas. And my husband pointed this out. He was really right. They really thought of everything at this resort. So normally you'd have a payapa and then you would have a chair on either side of the middle stand. What they did was they would had a double lounger with, like, I'm not kidding you, 4-inch padding, 6-inch padding. So it had a double lounger. And then on the other side of the pole of the payapa, they put just a regular lounger so that you could move it if you wanted to go and get more sun or less sun, or move it, as the day goes on and the shade changes. So they really did think of everything.
In terms of dining, what was the dining like at Beloved? I'm assuming, did they have a buffet like in most resorts?
No.
No. Okay.
No buffet. They had a steak restaurant, and one night a week they do Mexican style food with traditional steaks that would be done in Mexico. They had a French restaurant, Le Bijou, which actually I do have to correct myself. There is a buffet, but it's only for breakfast. And again, this was the nicest breakfast buffet I've ever seen. And I didn't go to it till the last day because I like to just pack protein bars, and I'm at the beach at like 7 a.m. and I'll just have my protein bar, and I'm not missing, a minute of beach time. But my husband would come back every day. You've got to go to breakfast. You have to see this buffet. So I did. And yeah, I was like another wow. There are 2 other restaurants near the beach. One is on the beach, and that is a seafood restaurant. They have a beautiful breakfast there as well. You're watching the water, but they have a problem with iguanas, and iguanas are very scary. they smell the food, even if you order something on the beach for lunch. It's, I was scared a few times by the iguanas. And then there's another restaurant that overlooks the main pool where the swim up bar is, and that's Italian. But the real this was the one thing that sort of blew my mind was they have a sushi bar as well in the main area where you congregate for all the entertainment at night. There is a sushi bar. You sit there and they, have a menu of different rolls that you can have. And I had that twice because it was just so good.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it really, really was.
Was the sushi your favorite?
Yeah, I'm going to say it was, because they would bring it to like your little sort of coffee table, and it's an outdoor lounge where you could see the entertainment late at night. And this was what was really interesting. This was the first place that I went to where all of the menus were on their app. There were no paper menus. You could ask for one, but you weren't going to get one. They were all on the app.
You got to bring your cell phone with you.
You do. Absolutely. Yeah, you do.
You were saying that it wasn't party central there, but I guess there was nighttime entertainment. I don't know if there's anything during the day. How would you describe the entertainment that you had, the options that you had there?
We didn't do any of the water activities because of, the foot, but apparently it's free at the resort. They have a catamaran that goes out into this really clear area just outside of the shore. And you can go swimming and snorkeling there for like an hour I think it's late afternoon that they take people. So there is that, there's kayaks, there's paddle boarding, there's, all of those types of things. They had water aerobics, they had games at the pool, that kind of thing, fun games. And at night, the entertainment was always musical. One night, which was so cool, was a mariachi band in traditional, their costumes were just absolutely gorgeous. And the detailing on the embroidery and stuff was gorgeous. We had guitarist 2 nights of the week where kind of like karaoke, but it was the guitarist who was not, there's nobody singing. There was an electric guitarist there doing it. That was really good. But there was one night, her name on Instagram, I think, is Claudia T. She blew everybody away. This woman, I just couldn't believe that she was not famous for something. Her voice was absolutely outstanding. I recorded some of the things that she sang. I was just like, how have I never heard of this woman before? It was really good, but it was subdued. So there was a rock band one night. That was good, but nobody was dancing. So it wasn't that kind of like, there was no show per se, but that was okay with us. We really enjoyed it.
I was interested in what you have to say about the water sports, because a lot of times in resorts, you have to pay extra for a lot of the water activities. There's not that many resorts out there that have the water sports included. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean they did ask, for a tip in kind, and that was totally fine with me. But every time I went up to go and see about it, he'd already taken somebody out or he was on lunch. So I didn't actually get to do anything. But that was okay.
When you look back at your time at Playa Mujeres, what was your favorite memory or your favorite moment?
I can't pinpoint one exact moment. There were a couple of things that when I look back on, oh, that was so nice. That was wonderful. Like swimming in the pool and it was so warm. I have to say the beach service is phenomenal. So, champagne at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. And there was one night, I think I mentioned, where there was a fantastic singer. And, again, the service was exceptional that night. Everybody was just, having such a wonderful time. It was relaxed.
Fantastic. Is there anything about your experience at the resort that you'd like to see improved? When I'm listening to you, it sounds like things went really well and there weren't too many things to complain about. But was there any recommendations you'd make? Anything that you don't want to change?
The iguanas, I think they were the male ones. They're a little territorial. And for someone who had never seen an iguana before, I was frightened, I have to say, especially when the food would come out on the restaurant at the beach. They come out from underneath the flooring or just laying there, on the beach. But yeah, I don't know, maybe find them a nicer, better location for them.
It might be a little harder to control the iguanas, but obviously the iguana made an impression on you for sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'd never seen one before, but
Yeah.
There were a lot of people there from Texas, and that was nothing for them. Like, oh, it's just an iguana. Okay, well, the Canuck is never seen one before, so it was a new experience. So it's something that I'm not going to say it was the highlight of my trip, but it's something that I can sort of giggle at now and look at, and I'm no longer afraid of them because I know that you just have to sort of swish them away, kind of brush like some sand over them, and then you're fine.
Good tip right there. How to get rid of a pesky iguana.
Iguana.
And just like any animal, they love food, right?
But neither got my burger.
That's great. You protected your food at all costs.
I did.
I'm proud of you. Okay, I think you mentioned earlier that your husband said that you would already be looking at making plans for next year. So
Yes.
I guess, a question I had for you is whether you'd consider a follow-up trip, but it sounds like that's already possibly in the makings.
Yeah, he just looked at me and just kind of nodded his head and said, "Next year?" Yeah, it was exactly what we needed.
All right, as I've mentioned already, you do run an Instagram account and apparently a YouTube account too. The Instagram is at @the.beachsnob. Could you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing on Instagram and YouTube and what that's all about?
So I'm hoping to bestow some of the experience I have to help people figure out what beach destination is perfect for them as a tourist. Because we all have different needs, wants, and some of us have physical challenges. Like, so for example, my husband just wants to sit on a gorgeous beach and stare at the water. Whereas, I want to see what's going on and I want to have conveniences nearby. I have to have a cocktail, those sorts of things. So everyone wants something different. And I just hope that whatever I can relay will help people choose a place that's right for them. That's it. And I just have so much fun doing it. I love beaches, always have. And I've traveled the world. I'd love to I could do this all day long. I could just talk about beaches.
Well, I enjoyed watching your top 5 beaches of 2025. I thought that was pretty entertaining. Yeah. So I like those top 5 videos.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, I think I said in that video that, now I've been to more beaches, but I will have been to another 10, I think, by the end of the year. And it's a tough one. St. Martin, Anguilla, Mexico. We're going to St. Lucia. And there's also a Canadian beach. Yeah, exciting.
Tough job, eh? Going around checking out those beaches and evaluating them.
I wish I could do it full time.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Robin. We really appreciate all the insights you had into beloved Playa Mujeres. And probably there's people out there who are thinking now, well, that sounds pretty good. And they'll be looking into it. So we appreciate you giving your perspectives on the resort. And hopefully that will help some people who are listening today.
My pleasure. Yeah. You're very, very welcome.
Once again, I just want to thank Robin for doing an interview with us. I do appreciate the information she's provided about that resort, and hopefully it has helped you in some way, or at least been of interest. Time for Deal's Dish. Now, I'm excited about Deal's Dish because, lo and behold, I knew we were talking about specialty dining, and look what showed up today. A special deal from Royal. It's called Royal End of the Summer Sale. It's an Expedia exclusive, so if you're going to take advantage of this deal, you will have to book through Expedia Cruises. I'd be happy to help you with that, as I work at Expedia Cruises Oakville South. But really, any Expedia Cruises location would be able to provide you with this deal. With this deal, you get up to $500 American of onboard credits, and you can get specialty dining for two. That's why I thought it was quite serendipitous that this deal showed up this week when we're already talking about specialty dining. So when you book a Royal Caribbean vacation between August the 10th, 2026 and August the 14th, 2026, you can score up to $500 to spend at sea and a specialty dining for two on eligible sailings. So what are those eligible sailings? Well, for these sailings, you have to depart between September the 1st, 2026 and April the 30th, 2027. So there's a window there, basically from fall of 2026 through to the end of spring 2027. If you're planning to travel during that time, you might be able to take advantage of this deal, but you must book it between August the 10th and August the 14th. So there's a 5-day booking period. Here's what you get. So if you're sailing for 3 or 4 nights on a Caribbean cruise, or 3 or 4 nights with a West Coast sailing, you can get onboard credit. $200 per suite stateroom, $100 per balcony stateroom, $50 per ocean view stateroom, or $25 for an interior stateroom. Now, if you want the specialty dining offer, you'll have to go on a cruise that's 5 nights or longer. And again, it would be a Caribbean itinerary or a West Coast sailing. If you go on one of these sailings, one of these itineraries, you can get $500 per suite stateroom plus specialty dining. Or if you book a balcony, you can get $300 USD plus specialty dining. If you book Ocean View Stateroom, you get $150 USD onboard credit. And if you book an interior stateroom, you get $75 USD. So those are pretty good offers. I particularly like the balcony stateroom offer. If you're going on a cruise, a 7-night cruise, for example, with Royal Caribbean, you'll get $300 USD for onboard credit, which is the equivalent of around $450 Canadian. So it's significant. And you get this one specialty dining experience. That's a pretty good deal. So if you are thinking of going on a cruise soon, I think you should consider booking between August the 10th and August the 14th. You can even just put the cruise on hold during those days and then pay for it when the deposit is due, which would be 3 to 5 days later. Now, this episode is being released on August the 4th, I believe. So that'll give you, about 6 days or so before you hit August the 10th. So it gives you a few days to think about it. And then sometime in those 5 days between August the 10th and August the 14th, you can make your booking and take advantage of this deal. I'll be going on a camping trip to Manitoulin Island in Ontario this week. So the plan for next week's episode is still a little bit in flux, but the plan is to hear a little about a client's trip to Disneyland, California, to talk about Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, and to have a discussion about using Sherpa to make sure that you're prepared for your next vacation. And hey, maybe we'll talk about camping on Manitoulin Island. That might be interesting too. I'm also excited to announce that in the coming weeks, we'll have an interview with Michelle Croft from Celebrity Cruises to chat about the new Celebrity River Cruises, the Celebrity Excel, and an upcoming March break cruise, one that my agency is offering and you could be a part of. If you're enjoying the information and inspiration provided in this show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast reviewing platform. Links to the show's page and to Apple Podcasts can be found in the show notes. And also, feel free to follow me on Instagram. Just search up @TheTravelAgent, spelled with an EH. And remember, if you want to tell me about your specialty dining experiences, please send an email to stephen@thetravelagent.ca. I can spread any recommendations through this podcast. And that's about it for today. It's time for me to go off camping on Manitoulin Island. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep planning, and keep exploring.